Would you pray with me, please? Help us, oh God, to keep first things first, and to always remember you and your will and your ways in our lives is foremost in our lives, that we might have your joy, your peace, and your power manifest every day. Amen. As I read the epistle to 1 Thessalonians that Roy just shared with us a few moments ago, I'd like to look at a couple of verses in particular. There in this, about the center of the reading, the Apostle Paul says to this beloved church that is really undergoing a lot of persecution in the time that this letter was written, first century. And the Apostle Paul says to them, he's saying about how thankful he is for their steadfastness and their faithfulness in the midst of all the persecution they're going through. And he says he especially is thankful for how they received the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And in that context, he says to them, just as you know what kind of people we proved to be among you for your sake, and you became imitators of us and of the Lord. What Paul is saying is that we came not only bringing you the word of the gospel, the teachings of the gospel, but apparently the way we walked and talked and lived in your midst so inspired you, in addition to the good news of the gospel, that you all chose to become imitators of us and of the Lord. Now, I'm a pretty stubborn person, and I really don't give a hoot, usually, day in and day out, of what people think about me, okay? You know, because folk are always going to be looking and watching what we say, what we do, the way we talk, the way we walk. You know, because people do that. We do that with one another. We watch each other, and we make running commentary on one another, don't we? We do. I'm not saying anything. We do that with the people around us, coworkers, families. We're watching what folks say and do. But most of us, like, well, folk like me, are really stubborn. I don't care what you think of me. Right? I'm going to do what I need to do what I want to do, and you may or may not like it, but that's your problem, not my problem. Isn't that I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but does anybody else have that kind of attitude sometimes? I can't worry about what you think of me because I got to live my life and do what I got to do. So there's a lot of us that are that way. But today's First Thessalonians passage is putting a kind of a challenge to that way of thinking. And it's saying that it does matter. The kind of image, the kind of rep, the kind of credibility that we have as we live and walk and move and speak and interact with people day in and day out. I know that on one hand I may say out of one side of my mouth, I don't care what you think of me, but at the very same time, I'm being kind of a hypocrite in the sense that I need to know that I do have credibility and respect and honor the people around me. I don't want y'all thinking tacky of me. And hope that when I mess up, I didn't say if I mess up, I said when I mess up or stumble or make a mistake, that because of I've established a track record of good credibility, that you'll cut me some slack. Right? We kind of count on that. We're hoping that I've done enough that in time you'll say like, okay, yeah, he messed up this time, but you know, most of the time he's got his act together. Right? Right? So, it is in the context of this that the Apostle Paul says to the Thessalonians, apparently the way we were carrying ourselves in your midst was sufficient that you became imitators of the way we do our faith, the way we live our Christianity, the way we, what is it, let our light so shine. Huh? And so we rejoice in that we have this opportunity to be something that folk would want to emulate. All right, now let's look at today's gospel lesson. Some of Jesus's antagonists are plotting. There's a conspiracy between the Herodians and the Pharisees. The Pharisees believed in a strict adherence to the laws of Moses. And they didn't like that under Roman domination there's this tax. And the tax, the money, had on it the face of the emperor. And the inscription said that the emperor was God. And so the Pharisees didn't like this tax because it broke the first and second commandments. Right? The Herodians were supporters of the Roman government. And they thought that everyone should pay the tax and be grateful that the Romans were doing all the great things that they're doing. But both of these groups, in spite of them being against each other, neither group liked Jesus. Both of them hated Jesus and wanted to get rid of Jesus. Jesus, you're in the way of our program, of our politics and our religion. We need you out the way. So they must have got their little heads together and said, what can we do to mess up our we hate each other, but what can we do to get rid of him? And so the text even says that the Pharisees and the Herodians come up with this scheme. Let's trick him. And so the flowery, the puffery that they use in the beginning of the text, they come, these two groups that everybody knows that where these two groups of people stand, they're all walking up to Jesus. Hello, Jesus. You're so wonderful. Everybody loves you, Jesus. And you're no respecter of persons. You know, they're just coming up with their hands folded, saying all this sweet, wonderful things. And Jesus is probably looking at them and go like, yeah, y'all up to something. The fact that two of y'all can't stand each other coming up to me smiling in my face, there's something going down, right? And so this is, we want to pose a question to you. Should we pay taxes? And Jesus sees their malice, the text says. And he says, you hypocrites, let me ask you a question. Whose face is on it? It said the emperor's. And the inscription says the emperor as God. So he says, okay, then he says, it's important to make the word apodote in the Greek is the word render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar and unto God the things that are God. Jesus is basically asking them two questions by flipping their malicious intent upon them. He's hitting them with two questions. He's asking them, what has authority in your life? And what is it that bears God's image? Let me ask those two questions again. What is it that has authority in your and my life? And what is it that bears God's image? So for Jesus to say to them as they're lifting up this coin to try to trick him, this is cash. This is money. And this is power and authority being manifested and represented and symbolized in this gold coin. Where do I put my trust? Where do I put my authority? What has authority and dominion in my life? Is it that which is physical, or is it that which is spiritual? Where do I, and the word I was mentioning, where it's translated give in RSVP, and it's translated render in KJV and in other versions, the translators say render is give what is due by obligation. So Jesus says to them and to us, render, give what is due by obligation to Caesar those things of this world that we would like to avoid it, we'd like to get away with it. I mean, if there would be a way of getting out of federal and state and local and county and taxes, I mean, that'd be great, right? We'd love that. David and I got our hunting license, tax for everything. Right? Just talk tax here, tax there, going to grocery, tax. Right? I don't want to do all of that. Taking my money, taking my hard-earned money. But then we do know that the money is used for education, it's used for infrastructure, it's used for wonderful, important, critical programs. And so render to Caesar the things that is Caesar. But in this country we have the wonderful opportunity to fuss at our legislators when we believe that they're misusing our tax dollars, right? We have an opportunity and an obligation to say, no, I don't want you using that money to keep me from being able to marry. I don't want you using things that are what I believe are unjust. And so we can speak to those things. But then Jesus says, but render to God. When I think about that coin and the picture of Caesar's face on it, and I'm trying to imagine that in my mind's eye, and then for Jesus then to say to them and to us, render to God the things that are God. It makes me worry about what people are thinking about me now. I have to own that. I gotta own that. Do I, every day, do I bear the image of God? Do I? In the way I walk, in the way I live, in the way I interact. I mean, when somebody pushes my button, anybody ever push your buttons? And all of a sudden this thing comes out and reacts to the button being pushed. Come on, we've all been there. And I have to ask, and we have to ask ourselves, what image am I projecting? Is it God-like? Is it Christ-like? Or is it this monster, this bear that just jumped out? This demon. I mean, what is it that I am imitating? The Apostle Paul said, let us be imitators of that which is good, of that which is right. Let us bear in our actions and in our interactions the love of God. And so when Jesus says, render to Caesar what is Caesar's and to God what is God, it is a direct challenge to us, my sister. Yes, it is. It's a direct challenge saying, you owe it to God. Yeah, it does. God been good to you. All right? You know God's been good to you. Come on now, think about it. Yes, there's been some things that have gone wrong and things that have gone bad, but when you put the scale up and you think about all the blessings that you got, we owe it to God. Come on now. We owe God some faithful, loving, grateful appreciation and service. Due obligation, render to God. What's due God? This could be a great stewardship sermon, but I didn't go there. Oh, oops. Oops. I guess I didn't go there. But the wonderful opportunity for us to daily keep in check and be mindful of and to stay focused on as I walk, as I interact, as I speak, as I live, and I said this last week and I say it again today, it will declare whose we are. Would you pray with me? Help us, O Lord, to render to God, to render to you, O God, all that we are, all that we have, and all that we ever hope to be. We give it to you because you have given us so much. Let our lives be filled with gratitude and praise, service, and your unconditional love. Amen.
Amen.